The moment the woman mentions getting home, there's a noticeable shift in Lucius' expression, a flicker of something almost like panic in his otherwise sharp gaze. Nero, on his shoulder, calls loudly in protest, as if also not approving of this idea. The king is about to speak when Lucius suddenly steps forward, interrupting his father. "You are not leaving." His tone is low, leaving no room for argument as he looks down at her, something almost wild in his gaze. The king bristles at Lucius' sudden order, his patience finally snapping as he gets up from his throne with a sudden sharp move. "Lucius, this is completely out of line." But Lucius pays him no mind, his attention entirely focused on the woman. There's a possessive gleam in his eyes as he steps even closer, his voice dropping to a low, rough murmur. "You will not leave. You will stay here with me." A flicker of confusion blended with the uncertainty in the woman's gaze, making Lucius' chest tighten with something protective and heightening that possessive desire burning within him. Lucius sees the flicker of confusion in her expression, and for a split second, just one, his gaze wavers. He exhales sharply through his nose before shooting one last glare at his father. "Father," he says stiffly, "she is clearly lost, and you would send her away into the unknown?" Then he drops onto one knee, right in front of Sonoria, without another thought about decorum or protocol, kissing her knuckles with an intensity that borders on obsessive devotion. The woman was taken aback by the action, clearly not used to such interactions. Her eyes widened at the look in his eyes, breath hitching slightly before she glanced again between Lucius and the king with that vulnerable uncertainty and a cautious concern. She obviously didn't know how to respond to this. Lucius keeps his gaze on her, his hold on her hand tight as he feels that subtle hitch in her breath. It only fuels the possessive spark within him. His lips linger on her knuckles for a moment longer before he slowly straightens back up, never breaking eye contact. The king looks like he's about to have an aneurysm from the audacity of his son's actions. He's never seen him like this with anyone, much less some mysterious woman who appeared out of nowhere. "Lucius, you cannot be serious," he sputters. Lucius shoots his father a cold, calculated stare as he lets go of Sonoria's hand and turns to face him fully, arms crossing over his chest. "I have never been more serious about anything in my life." His father exhales, the vein on his forehead visibly pulsing at how much of an insolent child his only heir is being. "And just what exactly makes you so suddenly determined to have this woman stay here, especially with you?" A hint of confusion crossed Sonoria's features, mixing with the uncertainty and concern as she remained seated on the floor of the throne room where she had fallen. It was as if she could sense that she was missing some detail about the conversation regarding herself, something that Lucius and his father seemed to be arguing over. Lucius glances back at the woman, noticing the confusion in her expression from the corner of his eye. The protectiveness and possessiveness within him flares up again. He hates seeing her like this, not fully understanding what's going on around her. His father, on the other hand, is watching Lucius with a calculating gaze, trying to piece together his son's strange behavior. "You barely even know her," he points out flatly. Lucius' shoulders tense at the accusation, a hint of anger flickering in his eyes. "And I have known every other woman you want me to marry since I was a child," he snaps, his voice low and dangerous. "All of them with their perfect manners, their perfectly polished smiles, and their completely empty heads." Nero let out a scoffing caw from his shoulder in agreement with his master's sentiment. Sonoria looked away at hearing that, her expression seeming to hold a similar opinion of high-status women, though she tried to hide the reaction as a hand rubbed awkwardly at the back of her neck. Then she paused, the implications of Lucius' words registering, and she looked up at him with a mixture of shock and confusion, a tinge of disbelief in her expression. A hint of a smirk tugs at the corner of Lucius' mouth as he notices the woman's reaction, catching that subtle expression of agreement. The king, meanwhile, is growing increasingly agitated by the conversation, his knuckles turning white as he grips the armrests of the throne. You are still expected to continue the bloodline, Lucius. Lucius' jaw clenches at the reminder, his gaze hardening again. I have no intention of marrying the mindless women you put in my path. The king exhales through his nose, clearly at his wit's end with his stubborn son. And what? You plan to marry her instead, a mysterious unknown woman from who knows where, no less? Lucius bristles, his possessiveness flaring again at the way his father refers to the woman, like she's some commodity or a tool and not the intriguing, captivating woman she truly is. Yes, he utters coldly, I will. The king's eyes narrow, disbelief and frustration in his expression. You would go against tradition for a stranger? Lucius' hands ball into fists at his sides, barely holding back the anger that's slowly starting to boil within him. I would go against anything if it means marrying her instead of one of those mindless fake women you want me to choose from. Sonoria's gaze snapped to Lucius with clear bewilderment, as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. Her form had stiffened, jaw dropping open as if her mind had short-circuited. Lucius' eyes dart to Sonoria, noticing her bewildered expression and the way her hands seemed to be clenching the fabric of her skirt. His expression softens ever so slightly at the sight, a moment of gentleness amidst the stubbornness and possessiveness. The king sees the moment of softness and jumps on it, a frustrated sigh escaping him. You don't even know anything about her! Lucius' gaze snaps back to his father, a sharp glint in his eyes. I know enough. A pause. His fingers twitch as he resists the urge to reach for Sonoria. He's already pushing boundaries with this whole spectacle, but he doesn't care anymore. She fell from thin air, like she was sent by fate itself, he continues lowly, and I am not letting her go just because you refuse to see what is right in front of you. Sonoria looked away, her mind clearly racing to piece something together. Her hands unconsciously brush through her long chestnut hair as she contemplates, her lips moving silently as if processing something. It was as though she had caught some detail. Lucius watches Sonoria with a quiet intensity, noticing the way her fingers absently tangle in her hair as she processes. Her silent muttering only make him lean in slightly closer, intrigued by this woman who thinks so loudly, even when not speaking at all. The king scoffs loudly from his throne. You're being absurd. You can't just... I already have. Lucius cuts him off sharply before turning back to Sonoria. Unless you object.